Welcome back to The Hatch. I'm Sammy Roth.
And I'm Rosie Murphy. This is the podcast where we talk about Lost.
This week we're talking about Everybody Hates Hugo, fourth episode of Season 2. I know I'm going to keep calling it Everybody Loves Hugo by mistake, so I apologize in advance for that.
We are also going to talk with Rick Romer, who was the set decorator for a number of seasons on Lost. He was responsible for setting up the scene when the plane crashed in the pilot. He decorated the hatch. He decorated a number of the rooms in flashbacks and on the island. It's a fascinating conversation, a really cool perspective.
But first, let's talk about Hurley. Let's do it. As always on The Hatch, we start with our hot takes. Rosie, what is your hot take about this episode?
This episode features the return of my all-time least favorite plotline, the peanut butter.
Oh, I forgot you hated the peanut butter.
We had a long discussion about this during season 1, where there's that scene that some people, like Sammy, think is very sweet. Claire is craving peanut butter, and Charlie pretends to have a jar of it. I find that so annoying, and we just return to it here. Although, of course, he does actually end up getting some peanut butter, and that is very sweet. But, yeah, that's all.
No, actually, my hot take is about Charlie, though. That line, "This baby's made of chocolate lollipop, so if you'd excuse me, I'm going to flap my wings and fly off this island."
I remember I'm going to flap my wings and fly off this island, but I do not remember this baby's made of chocolate lollipop.
That was what immediately preceded it. And
that, didn't even register for me.
Well, it registered for me, and it's a very funny line, and it is my hot take because it made me think that I should tell everyone who doesn't know there's this fabulous new Twitter account
yes.
called No Context Lost, at No Context Lost, which has just been sharing, closed caption screenshots of Lost when people are saying really weird stuff that doesn't make sense out of context. They had one the other day, which is just Hurley, and the caption, "This would be so sweet if we weren't all about to die." And, before that, Hurley's mom from this episode actually shouting at him, "Falling down is not exercise."
I retweeted that one.
Pretty good. Anyway, I thought that the chocolate lollipops line would make a good No Context Lost. So if the follower of this, the maker of that Twitter account is listening to us, that's my suggestion. Okay.
Now I'm just reading through this.
They're so funny.
Maybe if you ate more comfort food, you wouldn't have to go around shooting people.
Oh, and just one more, one of my all-time favorites here with Sawyer. "Who are we to argue with taller Ghost Walt?" So good. Anyway, I'll stop. Everyone should go follow this Twitter account. So everybody, not loves, everybody hates Hugo.
Yes.
How are you feeling about this episode?
So, why does this plot line where Hurley wins the lottery make me feel so sad? How is this possibly a sad story? And yet that's the mood of the whole flashback. Hurley's so nervous. He keeps saying everything's about to change. This is something that allows him to quit this job that he hates, where he has another one of these real shitty low-level managers with a big head, just like John Locke. He is, he asks out this girl who he's really liked before she knows he's won the lottery. Obviously, it ends up coming with a curse or something, but it really seems like Hurley has a sense of that as soon as he wins.
Right. This is before all of the bad things happen to his family, which is interesting.
Yeah. But never for a moment does he feel joy.
By the way, I have to interrupt just for 1 second to tell you that the horrible big-headed boss that Hurley has is actually the same horrible big-headed boss that John Locke had. That's Randy Nations.
That's Randy Nations. You're right. I forgot about that. Oh,
one of those great little
wonderful
Lost
job,
things.
Writers of Lost.
Yeah. But no, you're right. It's weird that he kind of immediately sees winning the lottery as a bad thing.
Yeah.
Which is not how almost anyone would react.
Right. Yeah, even before anything remotely bad happens. So.
It kind of seems like Hurley just thinks, I'm an unlucky person, and so anything serious that changes in my life or that happens to me will undoubtedly lead to bad things.
Which is interesting because Hurley already doesn't seem to be doing so great, right? I mean, what we get of him in this flashback is his mom is nagging him arguably with good reason, about his weight and how she just wants him to go out and find a nice girl and settle down. He's got this job that just really seems like it sucks. He's not in a great place. And so one way of approaching that would be change could be good. Change could be an opportunity for something better. But yeah, no, he's a pessimist from the start. Which is funny because we do see him as kind of happy-go-lucky and
right. He says that
fun
later.
time Hurley.
Time Hurley. Yeah, and it's by the way, Hurley's mom, who I love, when she's nagging him that
you have to change your life, Hugo. You think someone else will change it for you? Maybe if you pray every day, Jesus Christ will come down from heaven, take 200 pounds and bring you a decent woman and a new car. Yes, Jesus can bring you a new car.
Maybe I don't want to change. Maybe I like my life.
Oh, that must be Jesus.
The bit about, yes, it is Jesus on the phone who wants to know what color car he wants. Amazing.
I got a good laugh out of that.
I'm glad. No, but I guess this relates to what I was thinking about, which is that on the island where, in theory he doesn't have to worry about the lottery and, of course it's this negative thing again where he gets the responsibility of the food and he immediately doesn't see it as, oh, it's great, we have all of this food. It's, oh no, everyone's going to hate me because of all of this food.
You're right.
Yeah, which is pretty similar. But the thing that made me think, gee, maybe he has a reason to feel so negatively is that the two people that he kind of, you would expect to give him some sympathy here and to help him through this, like Locke and Charlie, especially Charlie, both of them are just totally unsympathetic to him.
Yeah.
Which is
Charlie especially.
Yeah.
And I was thinking quite a bit about that because Charlie and Hurley have kind of established this alliance. They're buddies. They're members of sort of the B team on the island. Like, they're not the decision makers, but they're frequently included. And I think Charlie is upset because he knows that Hurley knows something that he doesn't, and that's making him mad. But I don't think he really wants to know, right? I don't think it matters what's in the hatch. He just wants to be included.
Yeah, and it just seems so petty. Because, I mean, it's not that hard to see that Hurley is going through something and, could use a little support. And instead, all we get from Charlie is, when Hurley once again mentions that he, is worth a lot of money, is just Charlie, not believing him and making fun of him and walking away.
Right.
And then when Charlie does find out what's going on, it's exactly the reaction that Hurley feared, which is, I just want something from you.
Yeah.
Which is really disappointing.
Yeah. Which is sad because you're right. Hurley was kind of right.
Yeah.
While we're on the subject, we actually got a hot take from a listener that makes a very similar point. Let me play you some thoughts from Maria.
Hi guys, Maria here. I just wanted to start off by saying that I love the podcast, I love the show. So my hot take on Everybody Hates Hugo is just how bad of a friend Charlie is. I think it's pretty awful, especially to Hurley. And I feel like not many people talk about it because the show kind of highlights this friendship a lot as it being maybe the best friendship on the show. And I know that a lot of fans think that way. I used to think that way until recently when I was rewatching and I noticed that just Charlie brings Hurley down a lot and talks to him in a way that makes Hurley feel like crap for a lot of things and for no reason really. Like in this episode when he kind of tries to manipulate Hurley into giving him the peanut butter and he's like, oh, you're gonna say no to baby, you're gonna say no to Claire, and he screams and gets mad and he says, oh, you've become one of them. And it made me so mad that he would say things like that to a guy who has been nothing but nice to him, to everybody since they crashed. And also, I know that a lot of people have issues with Season 2 Charlie. I know that I do. And people say that Charlie in Season 2 is very out of character, and maybe. He might be. But I don't feel like he is out of character in the way that he treats Hurley here and in the rest of the season, because we've seen this behavior from Charlie before in season 1.
You know what? She's right. The Charlie-Hurley friendship, like, not just in this episode, it's
not great.
Nah.
It's really not. And I feel like I, on this very podcast, have said, I love that Charlie and Hurley are friends. But no, Charlie is, like, not a great buddy. Yeah, he makes fun of Hurley a lot, which is a strong point for Maria. And I think we haven't, like, I at least feel like I haven't really noticed it because everyone kind of makes fun of Hurley a lot. And he doesn't particularly seem to mind.
But with Charlie, if they're supposed to be such good friends, you would think that Charlie could be kind to him.
Yeah. Yeah, and Charlie is able to be kind to other people.
Certainly kind to Claire. He brings her fake peanut butter.
That's disgusting. Yeah, but, like, yeah, he just kind of beats up on Hurley, and I think I've dismissed it as, like, they're just goofing around, you know, bros doing what bros do. I would never say it that way, but you know what I mean. But no, you're right. You're right, Maria. I'm going to be more upset about this.
Maria, thank you for the call. Listeners, if you disagree with that point, if you want to defend the Charlie-Hurley friendship or have thoughts on any other subject whatsoever, give us a call. 9546-DHARMA. You can leave us a voicemail. We might play it on the show.
You can also, if you are not in the continental U.S. and don't want to dial a U.S. phone number, you can also record a voice memo of yourself on your phone and just send it as a message to our Facebook page.
Facebook.com/TheHatchPodcast.
Anyway, moving on.
I did feel like the pace of this episode was a little bit of a letdown after the last few weeks. Good episode, but it slows.
It did feel like we were taking a break. Yeah. But there was a lot going on. Like, we had several divergent plot lines. One of which is the growing importance of the folks from the tail section. There's a great scene in this episode where Sayid and Jack are, like, crawling into the depths of the hatch, and Sayid recognizes that there must be a geothermal generator behind that wall.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, Sayid, are we... Like, Sayid knows everything, I get it, but Sayid cannot possibly know everything. Could he really know that? I don't know.
I think we have every reason to believe that there is not a single fact in existence that Sayid does not know. I buy it.
Oh, jeez.
Since you mentioned that scene, I actually was thinking I love that scene. I had totally forgotten that Jack and Sayid, like, crawl around the underside of the hatch trying to get to the source of the electromagnetism. And I like it because, in light of our conversation last week about, you know, Jack's crisis of faith versus science, I like that he really makes an effort here to be like, okay, if we're going to be pushing this button, like, I want to know what's actually going on, what it's actually, you know, doing. Let's investigate. Let's find the scientific basis for this. Like, the fact that they go down there and it's so serious, and Sayid seems to take it seriously because of all the concrete poured, and it's like Chernobyl. Like, to me, that is helpful in explaining why it is that Jack does continue to go along with this.
Yeah, and I think you're right in that this provides a little bit of additional evidence for Jack that makes him okay with pushing the button, or at least not resistant to it. And eventually he comes to defend it. But I think he sees this stuff, and this is the push that he needs to say, okay, we should push this button. Pushing it is better than not pushing it. And now I have enough of a rational basis on which to stand when I defend this.
Yeah.
Which last week, right, we agreed that he felt like they needed to push the button, but he didn't know why, and that scared him. And this is enough ground here.
Yeah, for sure. Should we do some hindsight? Do you have any hindsight?
Do I have any hindsights? I have this is more of like a personal hindsight, but when Hurley and his buddy are in the record store, and he says to the girl he has a crush on, the Hold Steady's playing the Troubadour this weekend. That's such like a wonderfully 2005 phrase. I never went to see the Hold Steady as a teen, but boy did I want to.
I have not heard of them, actually.
And that sort of transported me back 13 years.
Oh. I'm sorry. I have been to the Troubadour.
Yeah, me too. It's a wonderful, wonderful venue. Famous old venue in West Hollywood.
That's nice.
Anyway, do you have any items of hindsight?
Just a quick one as well, that when Charlie, this goes back to Charlie being annoying to Hurley, but when Charlie accuses him, he says, you know what you are now, Hugo? You're the man. You're part of management. Actually, eventually, Hurley is the man. He is the man in charge of the island. So
The manager, if you will.
yeah. So
Yeah.
Charlie was spot on there, just like 5 years too early. Anyway, that's my hindsight. Should we go to Rick Romer?
Yes, because I have a lot of things I want to say after we listen to Rick Romer. But this is one of my favorite interviews that you've done, Sammy. Rick Romer lives out in Hawaii. You guys talked for several hours about his years on Lost.
We're going to be hearing a lot from Rick Romer this year. He does.
It's a lot of fun.
He references this in the interview. He does a lot of shows out in Hawaii. That's kind of his thing.
Yeah.
I would also like to point out that at one point in this interview, he will refer to the fuselage landing in the jungle and the tail section on the beach, but really what he meant is the cockpit in the jungle and the fuselage on the beach. So just going to point that out so it's not
Thank
confusing.
you for the advanced correction. Let's listen.
I guess let's start at the beginning. How did you get involved with Lost?
Well, I did my best not to get involved. It was a year where we had 3 pilots, and the other 2 shows had wanted me to do theirs, and I wound up...
We being the state of Hawaii had 3 pilots?
Yeah, Hawaii had 3 pilots in 1 year. I mean, we've never even had 2 before since we had 3. So I wound up doing a show called North Shore, and we actually did the pilot twice because it was so bad the first time we redid it. And in any case, I quit on the first episode, and that was actually a good thing to do because shortly after that, Gene Higgins called me from Lost, and I said, "What do you want a decorator for? It's about a plane crash. I mean, what are you doing?" And she said, "No, it's going to be more than that." So I said, "Well, I don't know. Let me think about it." And anyway, I had really nothing else to do, so I finally said, "Sure."
So I want to ask you about the pilot more, but before we go any further, just because I'm not that familiar with what a set decorator does, and probably a lot of our listeners as well, could you sort of just talk me through like what your work actually consists of?
Well, it's funny. I used to have one answer, and now I have 2, and that is that originally when I started back on I now have to say the original Magnum PI since they're starting to film the the set decorator and the art director were pretty much equal, and I would meet separately with the director to talk about the actual look of the show, and the art director would meet to talk about, what and where. And I used to describe it as they would do the skeleton and I would do the flesh, and that was kind of what it was. I would take whatever they gave me and made it into whatever they wanted it to be, and it was, I would keep the art director informed, but they weren't necessarily the final say in it. And it has since evolved to, besides the set decorator and the art director, there's now the production designer who basically is responsible for the overall look of the show. And it got to be to the point where on the pilot for the new Hawaii 5.0, the production designer said, the director doesn't even need to know your name. But anyway, that's what I would do is with me and a crew find whatever it took to create whatever they wanted, which in some cases being given an empty room, taking a storefront in downtown Honolulu and making it into an Australian police station. And then it was a challenge, but a lot of fun. I mean, when you're doing a New Orleans whorehouse one week and Iraq the next, and a restaurant overlooking Niagara Falls. The show, I have to say, was one of the most challenging creative experiences I ever had.
When they bring you in on the pilot and they tell you, okay, there's this plane crash, like, so what do you get to doing with that? Like, how, what is your role in, like, putting together that crazy plane crash set?
Challenge was, a lot of people don't know, they bought the entire plane in one of those Mojave Desert plane graveyards. They didn't ship the whole thing over. They shipped the tail section and they shipped the fuselage. And it was decided early on that the fuselage would be in the jungle. That's like where the pilot and a lot of the seats were. And then the tail section would be somewhere on a beach. And they chose a beach. I mean, it was like right on the main road. It wasn't like off somewhere hidden from the public. I mean, literally, the public could drive right through the set, whereas the fuselage was in a jungle. So the plane did not come exactly equipped. Like, we had seats from another plane that didn't match. There were no pilot seats or controls on the control panel. Each set had its own challenge, the fuselage being in a jungle that if you didn't have a four-wheel drive vehicle, you couldn't get to it, and the mud was so deep that you had to take off your boots before you went into the plane because you would trip. And then the opposite environment on the beach, no shade in sight, and hot and sunny all day, and the wing that was sticking up in the air was kind of like raising the flag each morning. There was a crane that they took out when it's viewed that would raise the kind of like raising the flag. It would raise the wing of the plane each day, and the craziest thing that happened on that set was that I got this emergency call one day, and they said the plane's collapsing. It's collapsing. Well, call somebody that can do something about it. I can't do anything about it. And then, of course, the more we did to the plane, the people were horrified because, it really did look like a plane had crashed on the beach, And,
it does.
And literally you would be driving. It wasn't like you'd see it in the distance. I mean, you'd come around by the old airfield out there, and there was this plane just, laying there in the sand. And I studied photographs and stuff, and I had never heard of the term debris field before, but we learned a lot about debris fields, and that is when the plane is scattering debris, it actually is like a field that sort of fans out. So we went through all of this, getting charcoal and breaking it up, but then when J.J. Abrams got there, he didn't really want a dressed set. I mean, you have to give him something. You got to make it look like a plane crash. But the way he shot it was each scene was composed of the elements that we had out there. So, in other words, where we had put something, that was just an object to him. And okay, bring that piece over here and put it here. Okay, yeah, grab that seat and put it at an angle there. Okay, that's good. All right, you stand here, you stand here. Okay, rolling, and then it was kind of, I called it my haul and dump theory from now on, where we would just haul dressing and dump it and then let him pull out whatever pieces he wants. He literally composed each scene. Now, obviously the big plane didn't move or change, but his visual sense was so great that he literally just composed every background, every foreground, everything,
wow.
and each scene. It was amazing. I've never seen anybody do that before. And we pretty much had everything we needed. It wasn't like we needed to go get something. I mean, it was a plane crash, and God knows we had every kind of luggage and dead body, and all. They didn't make it too gruesome. I mean, we did all.
You didn't have to go out and find like things that could be used for dead bodies, did you?
No, we rented all the dead bodies. It's actually more expensive to rent a fake dead body, than it is to hire an extra to play dead. I did a few episodes of VR here, and the fake dead bodies cost $200 a day, and you could get an extra for $100 a day. And I remember this poor guy lying in the mud all day, and I said, "That you weren't a fake dead body, you'd be making another $100."
That's truly bizarre.
Make him feel very good, but it was kind of an observation on my part. But so yeah, it was pretty much just show up every day, and a lot of times people who do pilots don't do shows. I mean, they're people that just specialize in doing pilots and things. But and of course that's when the Gene Higgins had did the pilot and got the plane and got it over here, and she did the show, and she's really an amazing woman, and not everybody's favorite, but you had to respect her knowledge and her decision making, and how she was able to keep that show together, and really did an amazing job. Yeah,
she was one of the producers, right? I know the name, but
she was actually a working producer, not a finger pointing producer. She actually went on Scouts and said no, and really, I liked her because she called it the way it needed to be called sometimes. And one of the production designers we were in a restaurant downtown Honolulu, and he said, he said, okay, I need all of these ceiling fans changed out. And she said, she yelled at him, and she said his name, and she said, don't you watch the show? We don't see ceiling fans. Because by then, I don't know if your viewers were that aware of it. I used to call the show Talking Heads because, they would insist on having all of this stuff, and we'd get it, and it would be there, and then you'd see the scene, and you saw I said first season was full head, second season was mid-forehead to mid-chin, and then third season was kind of like eyebrow to upper lip. I mean, they did a lot of close-ups on that show, and as a result, we didn't see a lot of our sets that we did, but and then I would just use it again and eventually get it on screen. But yeah, it was interesting. But I have to say, she was a really an amazing force and one that the show needed, and she kept it on even keel as much as she could, a show like that, and I give her a lot of credit for what was done and in some cases what wasn't done because it didn't need to be. So like changing out ceiling fans that we never would have seen.
So I definitely want to ask you about the hatch set.
We heard about the hatch going to happen, but it was all a case of, well, what's it going to be? Now, a little background on that. We had very little input from ABC, from Disney, from anybody first season. We were just doing the show, and they were in a cave, and this happened and that happened. But after the first season, there was a lot more scrutiny, I guess you could say, a lot more corporate Disney, ABC involvement and concerns, and they obviously knew they had a hit. And I know one of the silliest things I ever heard was there was a corporate memo that said, doors in the hatch shall not open left and right like Star Trek. They could only go up and down, which I thought,
wow,
really? Well, I mean, that's a corporate concern. There were other silly things like that. I don't remember all of them, but all we could do was, by the time we did the hatch, we were already on our third production design team. We went through two the first season, and then we started the second season with another pair. And I know the geodesic dome came as a kit, and I know they had a heck of a time putting it together.
Like a do-it-yourself kind of thing?
Yeah, it was like a do-it-yourself thing. And then I don't know that it worked out as well as it was supposed to. I know they wound up filling in some of the panels with styrofoam, and but I mean, I had a bigger challenge coming up with all this kind of 70s technology that obviously wasn't going to happen here. Well, there's a place in LA called Woody's, and he specialized in kind of anachronistic, outdated technology, and luckily he had banks of those sort of IBM, magnetic tape things that used to pass as a computer, and he had a lot of that technology, which he made a fortune renting to us over all that time. And
so that's where the hatch computer comes from?
Yeah. And now the biggest nightmare craziness on that whole thing was, what was the clock going to look like? And
yes,
I bought so many clocks and things that were taken apart, and I finally there was a clock shop here that had. In fact, we tried to get the Honolulu Marathon clock because it had to be reset, and we were thinking like electronically, but then they actually said, no, we want. Well, I had a clock radio I had given my dad as a Christmas present sometime in the 70s, and I had it just because it was kind of funky, but it didn't work anymore. And I know we wound up paying a lot of money for an actual like flip clock, but then they wanted it to go backwards, and it was taking too long. So sorry to disappoint everybody, but that was all CGI. Every time that clock was it wound up not being a real clock at all. We tried so many. We wasted so much time and money trying to get a real one. But I hate to break the news to the world that was all CGI. It never was real. So that's There, you've heard it first from me. Actually, I'd even forgotten about that until now. Yeah, we that was one of our failed missions, and it just literally couldn't do what they wanted it to do. And I mean, I knew the look they were after. It just couldn't do it. And maybe it could have in the 70s, but no, it wasn't going to happen. So they made that a total CGI situation, and so
well, clearly the rest of the hatch worked out. I was just watching some scenes before we got on the phone, and like it is just crazy intense looking in there. I mean, there's so much going on in the hatch.
Well, I remember I donated my reel-to-reel tape recorder, which was fine. I hadn't used it in probably 10 years. I don't even know if it still worked, but I one of the things I remember most about the hatch was it was around the time when, and I'll tell you this right now, if in case your viewers didn't know, those producers and writers read every one of your blogs. If they were posting something about the show, they were reading it. And in some cases, we would hear about it. But somewhere along the line, there was some rumor about book titles being, where clues were being left or something, which...
Right, yeah, Lost fans were always looking at what people were reading and what was on the bookshelf.
Right. Well, apparently that was, I wanted to tell everybody that the only distinction I made with books on that show were that dark books went in dark bookcases and light books went in light bookcases. That was it. And we would take shoe polish, regular old, whatever the brand is, came with a little sponge, and we would sponge shoe polish over the titles to obscure them, just so, because you're not supposed to be able to read the titles and stuff.
Were there ever situations where you would get sort of weird or specific instructions, like it has to be this way or it has to be that way, and it doesn't make any sense to you, but there's something going on?
I can't actually. That's a good question. I can't actually think of. I know my name will go down in history long after I'm gone for being the name of the tour guide in episode 1. You sign a release form saying they can use your name or image. So Rick Romer was the tour guide, and then
you're a travel agent, right?
A travel agent, but then the big one. This for some reason shows up even more in Google. The book that Claire reads, I think while she's pregnant or something, is something like Rick Romer's Guide to the Universe or Astrology.
I looked it up. It's Rick Romer's Vision of Astrology.
Oh, okay. So that will be on long after my headstone has fallen to dust. What an odd thing to be remembered for. Those are my 2 claims to fame.
Okay, I have some thoughts. Number 1, the clock in the hatch was CGI.
I know, so disappointing.
I'm kind of upset about that. I guess it's really good CGI because I had absolutely no indication that it was anything but tangible reality. But what?
I guess it's disappointing because I'd love to imagine that clock is out there somewhere and that I could somehow get it and have the hieroglyphic flipping clock in my apartment.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I figured maybe that part was CGI, but the 108 minutes I didn't think could be that hard. But who knows, man? Who knows? And the other thing that just floored me when I heard it was this idea that it costs $200 to get a fake corpse, but only $100 to get an extra and sort of make them up as someone dead.
Sort of a sad commentary.
Well, and I was telling a friend about this last night because I was just so floored by it. And he said, where do you even get a fake corpse in Hawaii? Is there an island rental shop that is just fake bodies? Because this was for the pilot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think they moved everything in from LA, but totally bizarre.
Probably.
Amazing that exists to me. I mean, I guess this is everyday life for somebody with Rick's job, but...
That was the thing for me about this interview, just the fact that his everyday life is just going and finding all of these really random items. I was just thinking about him going and doing the plane crash set and just driving all over Hawaii.
Yeah.
What a wild life to have.
What a fun job that must be.
It really sounds like it. there's a lot more to come from Rick Romer. I mean, we've got like another hour and a half of material from him, which we'll use later in the season. We talk later as well about the Others Village and putting that together, which is really interesting. So stick around and you'll hear more from Rick.
I think that'll about wrap it up for this week. Not too much contention going on in this in Everybody Hates Hugo.
Thank goodness.
But next week we need a break after those first three, but next week we've got Anne Found, which is a Jin and Son episode. Two of my favorite characters. Always thrilled to talk about them. And we will have an interview with editor Mark Goldman, an Emmy winner, for his work on Lost, including that Make Your Own Kind of Music opening sequence that we both adore.
It's so good, and he tells us exactly how they put that together and cutting it. It's a fun interview. Please follow us on Twitter. We're at The Hatch Podcast, Facebook.com/The Hatch Podcast as well. And most importantly, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps people find the show.
Yeah, and many of you have been finding the show this season. We are so thrilled to have you on board. Shout out to Andy G. Cohen, who created our theme music, and Danny Roth, who created our cover art.
We'll be back next week.
Namaste.